So here we go, into the accounts of the judges themselves. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Ashtaroths. Or Asherahs. Ashtaroth and Asherah are the same thing. We read back in chapter 2, verse 13, the word Ashtoreth. And here we read Asherah. It's the same thing. I don't make a lot of a distinction between the different kinds of Ashtaroths or Asherahs or Astartes or whatever name. It's the same concept. It's basically a female fertility goddess. There may have been slightly different names given to her in different regions or different dialects, but it's essentially all the same thing. Here we have the word Asherah. Previously we saw the word Ashtoreth. I think in some areas she was called Astarte. I don't know. You go farther east, and I think her name is Inanna or something like that. Basically all the same concept of like a female fertility goddess. They believe, the people of the world basically at this time believed that there had to be a male and female god in order to come together to make the world. That's one of the things that made it really hard for the Israelites and for the people of this time to accept there being only one God, one masculine identifying God. Because we think to ourselves, well, he has to have a female God. Like, there has to be a lady God out there somewhere. Otherwise, how do they make anything? You know, we still have this problem to this day. You know, we still talk about Mother Earth or the goddess or whatever to this day. So, or the Queen of Heaven or whatever. It's like there always has been, because there is none. You know, the way the Bible presents God, there's just one masculine identifying God with these three different personalities or whatever. And like, we still have trouble to this. Why the Catholics elevate Mary to the Queen of Heaven role or whatever she has. Like, there is still to this day trouble accepting that there's no like female goddess that's equivalent to God or his consort or his wife or whatever. Because that idea of there needing to be like a lady god to be the chief companion of the male god who runs the world just is all over the place. You know, it's like it was all over their culture back then, and it's around the world ever since. And it's part of the problem that they had understanding us. Like, how can he not have a female god, a female partner to make the world with? So that's what Asherah is. Asherah or Ashtoreth or Astarte or Inanna or whatever her name was in different areas is basically man's attempt to explain how God can have a lady partner with whom he copulates and then produces the world, essentially. So they forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs. The anger of the Lord burned against Israel. So he sold them into the hands of Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Aram Naharaim, that is northwest Mesopotamia, to whom the Israelites were subject for 8 years. But when they cried out to the Lord, he raised up for them a deliverer, Othniel. Remember him? Read about him already. Son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, who saved them. So he's still around. Othniel is still around. He I guess he's younger than them. He's Caleb's nephew. Caleb himself is probably younger than Joshua. But so he was younger than them, but he was still around even after they died, and he served as their first judge, who saved them. The Spirit of the Lord came upon him, so he became Israel's judge and went to war. The Lord gave Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Aram, that's basically Syria, north of Israel, into the hands of Othniel, who overpowered him. So the land had peace for 40 years, until Othniel, son of Kenaz, died. Now this is an early example of what's going to happen. Othniel would just be a member of the generation that saw the miracles of God out of Egypt, I think. He may have been too young for that, but he's not too far removed. I mean, he's Caleb's nephew, and he's married to Caleb's daughter, and so he is not too far removed from that faithful generation of Joshua and Caleb. He himself may not be in that generation, but he's not too far removed from it. So we can look at Othniel as being a good guy, a solid, stand-up good guy. We already read most about him, actually, earlier. We read more about him in the previous section than we did here. So we can count on him as being a fairly reliable guy. But after he died, once again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And because they did this evil, the Lord gave Eglon, king of Moab, power over Israel. Getting the Ammonites and the Amalekites, remember them? Those are the people who attacked us on our way out of Egypt after the Exodus. Eglon, I believe they moved in to conquer Egypt sometime after that. Eglon came and attacked Israel. I believe that during this period of the Judges, Egypt is under the power of the Amalekites, or the Hyksos, as they call them in their language, the shepherd kings. Now, this is not the timeline that you will get in most places where you look up ancient history. I believe the standard chronology is not accurate. I believe that it's largely, everybody acknowledges that Egypt was dominated by a foreign power for a period of time, somewhere in their history. They call them the Hyksos, the shepherd kings. That's not even a tribal name, that's just a noun, a word to describe them. I believe those Hyksos were the Amalekites. I believe they moved into Egypt sometime after the Israelites left. I believe they might have also been invaded by the western Libyans and the southern Ethiopians too at the same time, and were dominated by foreign powers after the Exodus. And I believe that is overlapping with the time period of the Judges. Now again, you're not going to find that. That's not the way it's normally presented. When you look at most ancient timelines or chronologies, you're going to find, most people will tell you that this time period is when Egypt was at its height, actually. They will tell you that Egypt was undergoing its new kingdom period at this point, and the new kingdom of Egypt emerged after they kicked out all the foreign rulers that were conquering them, and reunified under a single native Egyptian dynasty, and then began their expansion conquests again later. Most timelines you'll read about Egypt will tell you that is happening during this period of time, that the Egyptian New Kingdom is undergoing at the period of time when the Judges are happening. I actually don't believe that. I believe that the Egyptian New Kingdom overlaps with the Israelite monarchy. Talking about that gets a little bit away from what I'm actually doing here. But just as an aside, I believe that this time period of the Judges overlaps with the time period in Egyptian history where the Egyptians are being dominated by foreign powers from the west, south, and east. Which is why we don't read about the Egyptians in the book of Judges. Now again, people will tell you that these foreign city-states and foreign powers that were controlling Israel were themselves subject to Egypt. They'll tell you that. I don't see any evidence of that in the book of Judges. They'll point to archaeological data, but again, I believe that the reason why we're saying this is because we've got our timelines mixed up about when the Egyptian history happened. Stop that. So anyway, moving on. Obviously, there are some Amalekites even if the Amalekites, or at least some of them, are in Egypt right now. Obviously, some of them are still here. So, because Eglon is making an alliance with them, getting the Ammonites and the Amalekites to join him. I mean, the Moab and Ammon, of course, were brothers. They were the sons of Lot. They were kinsmen to Israel. They were on the east side. They lived east of Israel, and they were neighbors to each other as well. And they're frequently aligned. They're frequently allied together. This is the king of Moab, but he's made an alliance with Ammon and Amalekite, the Amalekites. To join him, Eglon came and attacked Israel, and they took possession of the city of Palms. So that's Jericho. Now, Jericho is a ruin at this point, and it's not going to be fully rebuilt until later. So whatever he's doing in the city of Palms, he's not living in a fully developed city at this point. It's a fortress or something along those lines. The Israelites were subject to Eglon, king of Moab, for 18 years. Again, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and he gave them a deliverer, Ehud, a left-handed man, the son of Gera the Benjamite. The Israelites sent him with tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. Being left-handed seems to have been kind of a trait of the Benjamites. We're going to read about a bunch of left-handed Benjamites later on. Which is kind of funny because Benjamin means son of my right hand. I guess Benjamin himself may have been left-handed. Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, the Israelites sent Ehud with tribute to Eglon, king of Moab. So when you were conquered by somebody, when someone had taken you out and conquered you, you had to pay him tribute or else he'd come and kill you. Basically, you gave him a portion of your stuff. Every year, or however often he demanded it, usually every year, you would have to pay a tribute, a portion of your product, your produce, to him, or else he'd kill you. So he's being sent to Eglon, king of Moab, with the Israelites' tribute. Now Ehud had made a double-edged sword about 1.5 feet long, which he strapped to his right thigh under his clothing, because he's left-handed, remember. So they're not going to find that weapon because they're looking for a weapon on the left side. They're used to right-handed warriors who carry their weapons on the left side. He's left-handed. He carries the weapon on the right side. They're going to miss it. Even if they do a body check, they're going to miss it. Stop that right now. You stop that right now. He presented the tribute to Eglon, king of Moab, who was a very fat man. After Ehud had presented the tribute, he sent on their way the men who had carried it. So he's not alone. He's got a party with them who are actually... Remember, this would have been stuff. I mean, this isn't just a check he's giving them. He's not going up to Eglon and just writing out a check for $10,000 or whatever. Okay, he's got like a cart loads of stuff that he's delivering to Eglon, excuse me. So he sends them on their way. At the idols near Gilgal. Let's see here. What's that word? The stone quarries. So near Gilgal, which by the way is where the angel of the Lord had been, they've got stone quarries, which apparently they have used to make some kind of idols. I don't know if they made them, or the Moabites made them, or the Ammonites made them, or where they got them. But apparently they've got some sort of landmark feature near Gilgal that is in the shape of idols, or stone quarries, or idols they've cut out of rocks as stone quarries, I'm not sure. That the idols near Gilgal, he himself turned back and said, I have a secret message for you, O king. The king said, quiet! And all his attendants left him. So I guess the king wants to hear the secret message. He must think he's important now. Ehud then approached him while he was sitting alone in the upper room of his summer palace, and said, summer palace, there's a footnote here. The meaning of the Hebrew for this phrase is uncertain. So what does it mean? Summer palace? We don't really know. And said, I have a message from God for you. As the king rose from his seat, Ehud reached with his left hand, drew the sword from his right thigh, and plunged it into the king's belly. Even the handle sank in after the blade, which came out his back. It's 1.5 feet long, and he's sticking it all the way in there. So deep in there that it's going out the back side, and he's going to actually lose it in the guy's belly. Even the handle sank in after the blade, which came out his back. Ehud did not pull the sword out, and the fat closed in over it. So it's all in him right now. It's all the way in there. Then Ehud, he must have had a messy... I imagine he had to clean his hand off after that. Then Ehud went out to the porch. He shut that's another phrase that the meaning is uncertain. He shut the doors of the upper room behind him and locked him. So he's not going out the way he came in. He's escaping through a window, basically. And he is locking the doors behind him so to make it more difficult for Eglon's attendants to chase after him. After he had gone, the servants came and found the doors of the upper room locked. They said, he must be relieving himself in the inner room of the house. They waited to the point of embarrassment. But when he did not open the doors of the room, so they're giving Ehud plenty of time to escape. But when he did not, when I go to the bathroom, when I'm relieving myself, that can take a while. Okay, I'm a fat guy. I'd like to think I'm probably not as fat as Eglon was, but I don't know. I'm a fat guy, and when I go to the bathroom and I relieve myself, that can take a while. Okay, I have to mark out a portion of my day to go to the bathroom because it's an ordeal. All right, from the time I get myself ready to go to the bathroom to the time I'm done, it takes about 30 minutes. It is a major ordeal. It's a daily process, and I can't treat that process lightly or flippantly. I've got peculiar issues that are unique to me. Stop that right now. But it takes me a while, okay? In the best of circumstances, it's going to take me a while. So they could have been standing around for a while. And it says here they're waiting to the point of embarrassment. Maybe they knew that Eglon often took a long time to relieve himself. So maybe they're waiting for a while, and even longer than that until they get embarrassed. So I can imagine easily this being half an hour or longer. And during this time, of course, Ehud is escaping. But when he did not open the doors of the room, they took a key and unlocked them. So they had the key. So there was no... Ehud shutting the door and locking it was not going to keep them from coming in because they had the key. But it was going to delay them because they were going to interpret that as though their king was relieving himself. And so they were going to wait. And that gives Ehud time to escape. There they saw their lord fall to the floor, dead. While they waited, Ehud got away. He passed by the idols, remember those, and escaped to Sirah. When he arrived there, he blew a trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim. He blew a trumpet in the hill country of Ephraim, and the Israelites went down with him from the hills with him leading. So they had some kind of a plan laid out ahead of time. This wasn't just some one guy going on a rogue mission, undercover mission by himself. There was a plan. There was a plan of attack that was agreed upon beforehand. Follow me, he ordered, for the Lord has given Moab, your enemy, into your hands. So they followed him down, and taking possession of the fords of the Jordan that led to Moab, they allowed no one to cross over. So they've controlled the river routes. At that time they struck down about 10,000 Moabites, all vigorous and strong. Not one man escaped. That day Moab was made subject to Israel, and the land had peace for 80 years. That's a long time. Previously it was 40 years. Now it's 80 years. It's a long time. That may not be the entire land of Israel, though. That may only be a portion of the land. It's hard to say. The book of Judges kind of jumps around provincially from one area to another. So I don't know if that means all of Israel or just that portion of Israel or that area of the land. It's really, we don't know, honestly. Anyone who tries to claim that they do know is, I think, not being honest, because frankly, we don't. There's just not enough information to be able to say that for sure. After Ehud came Shamgar, son of Anath, who struck down 600 Philistines with an ox goad. He, too, saved Israel. Now, Shamgar could have been contemporary with Ehud. Saying that after Ehud came Shamgar doesn't mean it has to happen. He came after Ehud's death. He may have just come after Ehud's conquest of Moab. Who knows? And Philistines were in a different region. The Moabites lived to the east of Israel. The Philistines were on the coast to the southwest of Israel. So because simply Shamgar fighting the Philistines doesn't mean that Ehud's chasing away the Moabites doesn't mean the Philistines weren't dealt with. So who knows? I mean, honestly, we just really don't know. We don't know how long Shamgar was around either. It doesn't give us a year figure for him. We just don't know. Okay, so those are the first three judges. We got a little bit about Othniel. We read about him before that, too. Got a little bit about Ehud. Got the account of his attack on Eglon, king of Moab. And a tiny little bit about Shamgar. That's the first three judges. Two, I guess we call the Othniel and Ehud major judges, and then Shamgar the minor judge. Next, we're going to come up against Deborah, one of the more unique judges because of her being a female and all. And we will talk about that next time. And we have Deborah and her buddy Barak, who is not the judge, but was leader of the army. After that we have Gideon. And that's where it starts to really turn south. Gideon is one of those guys who is often portrayed as more of a hero than he actually was. And we'll cover that. As we can already see from just the three accounts we've had so far, and even before that with the beginning of the book of Judges, this is a very military-themed book. There's a lot of focus on military action here. The Judges did more than that. We're going to read about Deborah, being a woman, obviously. She would not have been involved in the military. We're going to read about Deborah judging Israel while sitting under some palm trees. So to a certain degree, the military aspect of their judgeship was not the only thing they did as judges. I'm not even sure if it was supposed to be the major thing they did. We read about Moses getting the idea to appoint judges and leaders over the people from his father-in-law back when they were still at Sinai. And there you had no hint of the idea that they would be military commanders. I think the judges ultimately were meant to be like leaders, handling disputes like Deborah does. We see her in chapter 4. That somehow got overlapped with the idea of military fighting. I think because they did not end up driving out the inhabitants of the land when they were supposed to, so that left that opposition there they always had to deal with. So the judges then are forced to take on these roles as military commanders, whereas I'm not sure if they originally were supposed to. Anyway, but because I think the book of Judges, I think part of the reason why I think that we take the judges themselves, the actual judges themselves, especially the ones in the second half of the book, and I think that we portray them as more heroic than we actually should. Gideon, Jephthah, Samson, I don't think are really meant to be positive role models, but they're often preached that way. When you read about Gideon, for example, it's very common to have him preached about in a very positive sense. But Gideon did a lot of bad things. There was a lot of negativity about Gideon, and he left a very bad legacy for the Israelites. But we tend to not focus on that. And I honestly think that part of it is because these stories are about military exploits that speaks to a certain mindset, mostly in the minds of men, that we like. Like, we want to think that we could be Gideon and fight all these guys with 300 men. Like, that appeals to us. Like, that makes us think that we could do that too. And so we focus on that, but we don't focus on the idolatry that he led Israel into, or his timidness and his cowardice, or his taking credit for the victory when he should have given it to the Lord, which are also all part of the Gideon legacy. But because we would rather focus on him having these great military victories, I think we tend to look at him as more of a hero than we should. And I think that in general, we kind of look at the book of Judges that way. I think that kind of, like I said, I think that's just kind of a reflection of a certain perspective that often portrays it this way. So anyway, those are the first three Judges. We're through the first three chapters of Judges. We have set the book up. We have connected it with the end of Joshua. We've given a little bit more insight and a different perspective on the way the land was not conquered, and after they divided up the inheritances, the people did not end up taking their inheritances for the most part, at least not to the degree they were supposed to. We read the summary report of the time period of Judges in which there was deteriorating spiritual conditions in the land, increasing unfaithfulness, increasing apostasy. There's that word again, it means turning away from God. They compromised. They intermarried with the people of the land. They took their daughters for wives. They gave their daughters as wives to them. They followed their gods. They followed their Baals, their Ashtoreths. They engaged in their same cult practices, and had many, and eventually will adopt many of the same characteristics to the point where they're going to be indistinguishable from each other. And by the end of the book, the enemy is no longer even these foreign powers. By the end of the book, the enemy is the Israelites themselves. They have become their own oppressors. They have become their own enemies. And so, now again, the stories at the end of the book actually take place early in the time frame. But they're placed there, I think, to show us an example of the deteriorating conditions in the land during this entire period. And this is covering a span of 300 plus years. Again, our entire country has only been around for about 250 years, not even 250 years so far. So these 20 pages or so, these 22 chapters of the book of 21, I think, chapters of the book of Judges, cover a period of time that's longer than our national history at this point in time. So there's a lot of material here covered in a short amount of pages. And so we're only hitting the highlights, and even then we don't say much about them. But the point here is to show how being unfaithful to God, or even compromising in just small areas, certain areas, can lead to disastrous conditions, like we see repeated here and shown this very explicitly in the book of Judges.